Basically, I guess given sort of the gloomy macro outlook that a lot of people seem to have today, or at least from whatever your own sort of narrative is around the macro outlook right now, how that sort of trickles down into the crypto markets. And I guess, I don't know if you have specific opinions in terms of like infrastructure, NFTs, DAOs, DeFi, but or like multi-chain bridges or whatever, but I'd really like to know what you think about that. And I sent you a separate DM with a different question, but you can get to that if you ever get the time.
Cool. A lot of good questions. And you have not just one person here, but three. First thing I'd say is throughout my entire career, it's been really hard to forecast the macro sort of, I would just call it beta picture. Obviously, different asset classes have different performance. So it's not just beta to S&P, but beta to bonds or beta to whatever. And crypto is no stranger to having a kind of beta phenomenon or a correlation phenomenon. So, you know, it's easy to tell that, there's a gloomy outlook after the fact, right? It'd be nice to know ahead of time, right? So it sort of works the same way, forever and ever. There are people who are good prognosticators of this stuff, but there aren't many of them. And there's probably not somebody like that in this room. I mean, it's very, very rare to meet somebody who can tell the market cycles and market timing. Like that's an extremely rare skill. And most people who have that skill seem to not be able to repeat it. So, so basically, after sort of watching that for around 20 years or almost 25 years of investing, the first sort of 10 of which were fairly clueless, I've sort of determined that, it's best for me to avoid beta and avoid kind of trying to just have exposure that's universally long. And so cash is probably like a safer hedge for those of you who are maybe too timid to do shorting. But cash and shorting kind of go hand in hand. In my opinion, cash is just a really safe hedge. Whereas shorting is a hedge where you can get positive alpha. So I think that if you look at the macro, again, it's fairly unpredictable. I think I said this on a different spaces that in 6 months, I could see 4 different scenarios ranging from really good to really apocalyptic. So it's just not that useful, and two very middle of the road. So I really, think it's a waste of time for a lot of people to speculate and pontificate and sort of, just kind of generally guess, in essence, what's going to happen in the future. And part of the reason for that is everybody has the same information. And in essence, most of the information that influences the macro is fairly unpredictable. Would you have envisioned a Ukraine war? Would you have envisioned dramatic inflation, et cetera, et cetera? If you didn't get those trades, I don't know how you would expect to get the next trade that's unpredictable, So the best thing to do is to use your expertise in a narrow field. It could be crypto, it could be whatever, and just try to get alpha. And again, if you're scared to short, just keep cash as your short, and I think that's good enough. So in terms of crypto itself, I think that a good example, for example, would have been to be long Bitcoin. Again, this is retrospect. To be long Bitcoin and to be short virtually everything else, right? You would have done really, really well. So there's a flight to quality right now, and typically flights to quality happen when there's nervousness about the macro and other things like that. So again, hard sort of circular definition there, very difficult to sort of have seen that. Solana is an example of probably would have clearly not been solved. And it probably was a good short starting with their first sort of outages. And now that, you've had repeated outages, it starts to call the ecosystem into question. Again, I actually was looking up Solana documentation today. So I'm not saying that the blockchain is cooked or whatever, but I was just joking about finding a low latency blockchain. And somebody said Solana, and I replied with, I thought Solana was deprecated. It's brand new, but it's still sort of one of these things that, it's going through some unfortunate times right now. And, that's sort of for a fast trader, was a pretty good opportunity. Obviously, if you were really brilliant, you could have found a way to short, some of the stuff that's dropped 90% or 99% in the case of Terra, Luna, and so forth. But that would have been nice in retrospect. So I think staying with alpha and trying to find the most robust sort of, infrastructures, as you mentioned, is the name of the game. It's very difficult, just like stock market. I mean, it's not easy. I think the good news is that the arbitrageurs in in crypto, it's still sort of a young native industry. I'm sorry, a young sort of industry that's still doesn't have like the amount of arbitrage intensity that Wall Street has with stocks and things like that. So the flip side is that there are only so many things to trade. So there is some arbitrage. So again, whether it's with smaller coins or with sort of reacting quickly or being delta neutral, there's a lot of probably ways to make money in this space, as well as different asset classes like stocks and so forth. So it's an exciting space. I'm really excited to be a part of it, contribute to it as best as I can, and still learning quite a lot. I don't know if that answers the question or if my great.
I heard it mention DAOs as well, and I particularly like really have my own really kind of extremist views on DAOs, and I don't think they've really kind of like really hit on what idealistically it's supposed to be. Like you just see like with Luna, and like you have certain people that have majority like say so. Like so even if the average retail holder of the DAO, they pretty much have their own sentiment, and then somebody comes in like Do Kwon and kind of just tries to like flesh out their opinions. So I think idealistically it sounds great theoretically, but like in terms of like realistically, I don't think we've gotten to the point of really like having an efficient DAO model.
Yeah, and I was
True that.
There's this place, this DAO, PleasrDAO, and so it's really funny because I have personal experience with PleasrDAO to some extent, personal. I had a record that I had a physical copy of and I had a digital copy of, and PleasrDAO spent $4 million buying the digital copy, but didn't even think about whether or not I still had, the physical copy, without thinking about whether or not I had the physical copy. So there's this DAO that bought the most expensive record in the history of mankind, right? $4 million. And they never bothered to figure out never bothered to sign an agreement with me. Never bothered to do anything. So you have this a really sloppy example of a really big transaction that just kind of has gone left now. Because DAOs aren't corporations; they're not quite equipped to do that, and I think it's kind of irresponsible, in terms of kind of organizing, a DAO. Like you have to. There's a reason companies have lawyers. There's a reason companies have boards of directors, CEOs, things like that. Like they're not great. All that stuff sucks. Don't get me wrong. I hate boards of directors. It's really painful. But they clearly shot the bed with this wu-tang thing, at least. So yeah, I agree with default that DAOs are kind of a great thing in concept, but the very first DAO was robbed, right? So now we have this PleasrDAO that kind of did a really ridiculous transaction, and I can tell you that I don't think the Wu-Tang album, I was betting that it was worth $500,000. I bought it for 1.5, so I assumed I would have lost most of my money going into it. So buying it at 4 million, I don't think makes any sense, and certainly buying just the physical copy at 4 million really doesn't make any sense. So I think DAOs need to sort of grow up and get better before we see them become a real thing.
What's your opinion about Do Kwon? Do you think he will go to jail? Or
when Do Kwon made those tweets about like have fun staying poor and like all this stuff, like we really kind of a jerk. I don't know if you guys saw that. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I followed Do Kwon.
So I don't know. That was like a great sign of like just an incompetent kind of person, and I'm. I don't want anybody to go to jail because a bunch of us have been to jail, and it's just not a good or fun thing. So, again, I think you kind of get what you deserve in life, and he's kind of getting what he deserves.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Also, generally, like there's the big debate about like, oh, it was just a failed project and all this and that, but it's honestly like, at the end of the day, he's promising his investors this unsustainable APY that's really backed by a lot of venture capital funds. And he knew there was a giant discrepancy right there, right? With all the backing they're doing of Luna, they're doing these big purchases of Bitcoin. And I think it was like 2 years ago or whatever, he even basically stated the type of attack that could be done on their currency. And it happened. As to like, who was behind it or whatever, we could speculate on that for forever. But generally speaking, also like Enrique was saying, his general demeanor towards people criticizing him really just kind of like formulates like what's I think is going to happen to him. I'm not going to like you said, also, I don't wish that on my enemies because, it's not a fun time in prison. But I honestly, at the same time, I don't feel bad for him. And what he's doing right now with Luna 2.0, like, I'm astounded that he's not facing like a trial right now. I think even some federal prosecutors spoke out and saying that it would be hard to prosecute him on this. But the fact that he's just, 60 billion liquidated, and he's just going to move on and make the next Luna 2.0, which is doing terrible right now. And I've just been shorting it mercilessly. But yeah, I have a very extremist view on him. So
kind of got two questions. Just want to hear your guys' thoughts. In the DeFi space, I've been exploring liquidity mining on DEXs. And right now in a bear market, it seems a little difficult to do so because there's not as much volume. And also just opening up a short on the two that I'm providing for, because I'm not doing it with stable coins, to remain delta neutral. I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on that strategy and if that's something that makes sense in this market right now.
Yeah, I mean, these guys know a little bit more than I do, but I think being long the underlier is obviously the big risk, and that was the sort of joke about some of these other, sort of APY, as default said, opportunities. Like, if somebody's offering you a 50 to 100% return, all you have to ask yourself is, what's illegal about this, or why is this not going to last?
Where's that coming from? Yeah, it's extremely valid.
The last time I saw something like that, I was running a hedge fund, and some guy came to me saying he's doing 50 to 100%, or more than that, in fact. And he was doing payday lending and other kinds of like relatively extortionate type of lending. And I passed on the opportunity for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons is there's usury laws as well in this country. So every state's different. You can't really lend somebody money at 40, 50+%. So these opportunities do exist in crypto. I just think you have to be really careful about what's the catch, because there's always a catch. Now, making 20. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I think that's kind of my whole thing too. Like, I got into crypto through mining because contributing to the consensus makes sense to me. That's value. So that's where I started exploring liquidity mining. So like, when this coin gets exchanged, you get a small percentage of that fee, and then opening up the short kind of helps keep you delta neutral. But I can't find the conviction, which I think I answered it myself out loud, but it's just right now I find it difficult to really continue with that strategy with like low volume and moving towards a bear market.
Yeah, I don't personally do it, so I don't know, but I think some of these guys have a better opinion.
I definitely can agree with you on delta neutral strategies right now in this market sentiment. It's really paramount. I myself am looking into a lot of delta neutral because honestly, I mean, you can argue back and forth of if we're in a real bear market or whatever, but choosing to just go long or short right now is really just the risk reward, in my opinion, is not really there. I don't know which exchange you were talking about. If you were talking about GMX.
I've actually been doing it on Uniswap v3 because I can set the boundaries with low gas. So for example, I can open up a liquidity providing like an LP, and then say I get out of range, I can open up a new LP very quickly with low gas fees. So it's not like doing it on Ethereum where you provide this on like Tracer, and if you do it on Ethereum, you're paying like gas each time. Therefore, like, having a really tight bound isn't a good idea because you're not moving in the high frequency trades. But yeah, I've been doing it on Uniswap v3.
Yeah, as to like the APY, what you're talking about, a lot of these projects, they keep saying this, but it's like you have to show your investors where this APY is coming from. And is it sustainable? Or if it just like, I think right now, what is it that's running out of their payouts? I don't know if it was Curve Finance or if it was like, is it Celsius? I can't remember. But a lot of these APY payouts are just like I think Tron right now, or USDD. It's just, it's the same thing over and over again.
The big APY, like if you look at the strong kind of vaporware kind of thing with just crazy APY. But on to my second question. We're moving into this bear market, not too much activity and volume. Still a decent amount, but a lot of things are happening in the NFT space, which causes memes, which I feel is the best way to get eyes on anything. And just looking at like what the new meta could be with NFTs. Like my thought, and I just want to hear your guys' opinion, is kind of rewinding back to the original with like a free mint and then putting some type of small royalty on it. So the team's incentivized to make a really strong NFT community utility. And on the secondhand market, the trading happens, which incentivizes the team to continue to push, because it kind of, with these like high mint rates, it seems like it's like when a startup gets VC funding and just kind of like, okay, we have our funding now, we can stop.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. You know, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think the big question is, can a new meta really happen? That's exciting. I'm sure, no doubt, there's so many creative people out there that will see something new. But I was just complaining the other day about how tired the whole 10,000 kind of Avatar-esque kind of, you know, whether it's goblins or miladies or what are we going to get next? Toads, you know, fucking snails, you know, God knows what, you know, every single kind of thing has been done. And we need something new, you know, something fun and new. And hopefully one really creative person can make $5 or $10 million figuring out what that looks like. But I'm kind of sick of, you know, cool cats and bored apes and, you know, all this stuff is just kind of corny to me. Goblins.
Yeah. I think what Ryder did was a good example of just like the artwork showcase, just to start that conversation. But it all comes back to like what you're buying is, you know, a unique token, and almost treating that as like a software validation code where like if you buy this NFT, you have access. Like that's what makes the most use case, in my opinion, right now, is just the accessibility and viewing it as like when you used to buy Adobe Suite, you get an access code. Now it's just on chain.
Yeah, it's great technology. I just think, you know, the artwork is suspect, and, you know, the least artistic thing in the world is to make moonbirds. And now, you know, I mean, I've seen every one of these. Like, there's just hundreds of the same thing. You know, that's not art. Art is when you do something different. You know, and I think like nobody should buy like something so derivative as like a goblin or whatever. Like that stuff's just too corny. Like you gotta think outside the box.
I've been around blockchain space since 2011, so I've kind of seen all these cycles, and I've been through a few of the crashes, and I know watching Luna crash was interesting. I just did what you would do in 2016, which is just bet on the fork, and that worked out. But I guess my question is,
good trade.
I know everyone hates Do Kwon, and it's pretty easy to hate Do Kwon given that he walked around with a giant target that said "hate me." I think it's fair for him to catch that hate. In my opinion, just kind of looking at it, he looked a lot more like an athlete being extremely boisterous in the sense that he was also producing product, or at least his community was producing product. So, you know, in one sense, it was a lot of talk. On the other hand, he was delivering. He showed up the next day after losing $36 billion. I know a lot of people that would have put a gun in their mouth if they had done that. He didn't do that.
Or million? Million or billion?
No, but it was not his money, so why would he care, to be honest? Right?
I mean, I know we can put it that way, but
like look, I mean, who was the last guy to destroy that much capital? 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Did he kill himself?
Yeah, like
right?
Years.
Yeah.
He didn't get a chance,
I mean,
and he is dead. He was in jail.
His son did kill himself, if I'm not wrong, correct? One of his sons.
He did.
Yeah. So I guess my point is that I'm trying to make here is we can disagree that agree that he shouldn't be running a thing, because I don't think you can just like remain at the helm and necessarily get to run another thing. I took my position in Luna to begin with because it was a VC like bet. I wasn't betting on this fake money. I'm sorry, it wasn't hard to run the numbers on how those things work. You can't only pay out value. You must create value that someone is willing to pay for also. So that wasn't it. But I took my position and I wrote our position all the way through simply because it was a 1% bet of our fund. It was not a high risk, over levered position. We were betting on a project that was still early. And
no, so if I could just jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
It was obviously a great trade. So one, congratulations, right? And it's a prudent trade, right? Like you said, 1% position sounds very prudent. And I'm putting up, I'm asking Raul to put up a quote from Teddy. I'm sort of putting on this quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I think everybody knows is about the so-called man in the arena, right? That the critic is just a critic, right? And that the person that actually, you know, goes in there and risks his end and tries to make something, and even if he fails, is still, sort of the person who tried, right? And the person history remembers. All the naysayers and all the haters on the side, are what they are, right? So, not to throw default on the bus or anything. I'm just saying that, there's something sort of to that. So I'm with you on that kind of aspect. Like, the guy tried, he did his best, he failed. He was a little arrogant on the way up, which is kind of, I think, the only thing I'm pointing out. He was sort of so sure of himself and so kind of so much of it that, nobody's upset that he's failing. And you have the same dynamic with like Elon Musk. You certainly have the same dynamic with me. You have a dynamic with like a lot of people who are sort of just kind of like, oh yeah, take your best shot. Nothing's happening to me. And then life comes and humbles you, and you kind of have a learning experience, and for him, the learning experience is really big, right? That's the big difference. Is like most people's learning experience is like getting fired from the ice cream shop. His learning experience is like, oh yeah, I lost 60 billion today. So it's a really like painful, public spectacle that, is a cautionary tale, I think. And in that, the more people don't like you, the more they're going to shoot at you and try to find a way to expose whatever you've done that's wrong in your life, period. And that sort of happened to me to some extent. And I think for him, I think his arrogance probably got a couple people to crack their knuckles and say, how do I figure out how to take down this protocol? And like I said, a lot of people probably just said, oh, you get what's coming to you. And that's what happened to Do Kwon. But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. I know Default's pretty emotional about it, or maybe you can tell me what you think of what I just said.
There's tons of perspectives to take on this, and I don't hate the guy per se, but I think he knew what he was doing all along, and he was just trying to keep the sinking ship going per se. But I definitely don't believe that he should be heading up another project right now. Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to give too much of I'm really biased on this. It is what it is. And like he said, I don't give too much merit for him showing up the next day, because at the end of the day, what are you gonna do? Run away? That's just gonna add credence to what you're doing. Was like, you knew what you were doing, so like, yeah, you had to show up the next day to like save face. But yeah,
but humans don't. I think my only point with that is it's not. That might be what we're supposed to do on paper. That's not what people normally do. People do run away. They run away all the time.
But he's obviously not your average person, right? This guy is kind of like, I mean, some people would even say this is not even valiant behavior. It's almost sociopathic.
Like, he destroyed so many lives. That's why I hate him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence for that. So it's 80-90% a troll, mostly because there's some PR person at Algorand that doesn't like me talking about Algorand. And one of the things that you probably should figure out if you're doing PR for a blockchain company is that you can't really stop somebody from saying or doing things in the blockchain. So if you're going to take on a client like that, it's a good thing to learn. You're going to get all kinds of people that can say whatever they want. So now Mr. Algorand forevermore, it's going to be on my gravestone. So I think tough lesson for that person. But no, I agree that it's a very interesting protocol. It's not the only one. There's other ones like it. And I do think that the greater point to take away here is that there's sort of this false prophet in Vitalik Buterin, who I grow more and more suspicious of every day, to be honest. One, we have a very weird roadmap to sort of 𝗏2, and whatever you want to call their new proof of stake. It's got a couple of names now, I think. So, the whole idea of this 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗁𝗏 trilemma has been more or less debunked, I think. And whether it's Avalanche or Algorand or Solana or others, we're going to get to or any brand new blockchain we don't know about. We're going to get to a sub 1 second, widely distributed high TPS layer 1 solution. And I think that's a problem for Bitcoin and for Ethereum. And you kind of have to do what a lot of these companies have done, which is a lot of companies in the decentralized ledger technology space, which is that you have to put yourself out of business, right? You have to innovate so fast and so quickly and so masterfully that your own products are the ones obsoleting your old products, not some other company's products. And I think, you can look at Oracle and many other companies that sort of rest on their laurels. And certainly Bitcoin is in that dynamic, right? Satoshi quit Bitcoin in 2013 or 2012. you know, he said he was quote unquote onto better things or onto other things. I don't know, after you make the greatest invention of all time, what you could possibly go on to other things to do. But, you know, it's very funny that Satoshi moved on. So again, I don't know what blockchain will, if any blockchain will replace Ethereum and Bitcoin, but I do think that the so-called trilemma is a farce, and that we will have a blockchain, if we don't have one already, that has all three sort of desired features. And you know, that's just my 2 cents. I like Algorand, but I'm not saying that it's like perfect or that, you know, it's the winner or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Avi actually works in crypto space. I'm curious if you would have some more insights here. By the way, Enrique, I pinned that quote you were sharing above, so if anyone wanted to read that whole thing that Enrique was talking about, it's on the top.
Yeah, so I give Do Kwon one point for kind of at least being, you know, he did it, right? So anybody that wants to blame him, or he actually built something. Yes, it failed, but he did build something, which puts you one step above, you know, somebody who hasn't built something. So it's very, you know, that's my problem with journalists, right? It's very easy to criticize. Like you try making a blockchain, you try building a publicly traded company. It's not easy, you know, and if the fact that it became successful in the first place is somewhat commendable. You know, again, so I'm sort of, if I had to pick between a critic of Do Kwon and Do Kwon, I'll take Do Kwon any day. But certainly, you know, that's not the only two choices. You know, they're not, you know, collectively exhaustive.